of each stage. Like you have multiple stages, capacity of each stage is the number of resources in that stage divided by the processing time. So this was the general formula. Why did I write that? If every stage, like in the subway example, there are 3 stages, and in every stage there is one employee. But it doesn't have to be one employee, right? Just in some stage maybe there is 3 employees, and then the NI is the number of employees. So because the processing times that we are going to deal with will be always given, that will be our consensus, the processing times will be always given for one worker or one machine per unit of 1 unit of customer or a product. Okay? That's why we write them like that. So, keep these things so it's easier. So then this is our capacity of each stage. And last time I also mentioned that while we will be dealing with these buffer inventories, so we assume that there are buffer inventories between the stages, whenever I'm drawing that, I just skip the triangles, okay? But we know that there will be some buffer inventories. So then, last time, as you might remember, we said that the process is as fast as its weakest link, which is the slowest. It changes as fast as its slowest stage or slowest link. Because of that, we take that the process capacity is the minimum of the capacity. Okay. And then from here, we say that if we want to, how many units are passing through our process per unit of time? Going back to Starbucks example, how many customers are passing through Starbucks per unit of? It depends on the 2 things. One is the demand, and the other one is the process capacity. If Starbucks can handle 50 customers per hour, but there are only 25 customers coming per hour to their shop, then only 25 will pass through the system, right? This will be called demand constraint process. Otherwise, if the Starbucks can handle 50, but 75 customers coming to the system, then only 50 will pass through. Again, the flow rate will be equal to the minimum of demand and the process capacity. And when the demand is lower than the process capacity, we call the process a demand constraint process. When the capacity is slower than the demand, which is smaller than the demand, we call the process a capacity constraint process. Demand constraint, capacity constraint, these 2 things are important. We need to know if it's a demand or a capacity constraint process because it defines our strategy, right? Like how are we going to attack this process to improve. Alright, from there on we say that like we need utilization. We need to know the entire utilization of the entire process plus the utilization of each stage. And utilization is nothing but, I'm talking about the entire process, the U is the notation. What is going through the process divided by what can go through the process, right? What is going through the process is the flow rate, either the demand or the process capacity can go through the process, is going through the process, and what can go through the process is its capacity. So that's the difference, right? What is, what can. We can extrapolate that idea is divided by can to the every stage, and then we will simply say that the utilization of each stage is again what can go through what is going through the process and what can go through the process, capacity of that process. And as you can see, because R is the minimum of demand and process capacity, if you place R in here, you will immediately notice that the denominator is lower than the numerator, and therefore it's always less than or equal to 1. Any questions so far? Are we all on the same page for these metrics? And then last time we also talked about the one last metric, it's the cycle time. we said that cycle time is the rhythm of the process, which we look at the end of the process, we see how fast the process is moving in general. It's the formal definition of the cycle time is the time between two consecutive units leaving the process. But if you extrapolate the idea, it's actually the time between the entire process moves. Like even in stage employee 2 here, every 40 seconds, let's say, serve the customer. So that's the idea, and therefore it's nothing but the flow rate. It's just a different way of talking about flow rate. It's essentially the same thing, but 1 over R is the cycle. Okay. So now that we have our all formulas, we can start analyzing the our process for the subway. So we have 3 employees. At each station, we have only 1 employee. That's all it's okay. So this is a real list of what is defining the subway to give kind of their, let's say, managers or employees doing their training. Basically, they define 3 stations, and in each station there are certain tasks, and each task they estimate an average amount of seconds. Of course, in reality, these averages vary, of course, but they're by their experience that like these averages shouldn't vary that much, and like a trained average skilled worker should actually fall. And I bet they had some sort of benchmarks to see if this is working or not. Okay, so and then by taking this list, we turn into this chart. Like for example, the first employee says, "I'm going to bring the customer, take the order, start preparing the sandwich," and the second employee kind of finishes the sandwich, and the third employee just offers a dessert or other valid meal options, and then complete the cake. So that's roughly the vision of tasks. And if we add the processing times, like for each task, then we get the total processing time for the first employee as 37 seconds per customer, and the second employee is 46 seconds per customer, and the third employee is 37 seconds per customer. So this is the current processing times of the. So now our first step is like, what are we interested in for this process? We're interested in to find the capacities and capacity is the one over processing time. So we're going to calculate the capacities, and then we're going to calculate find the bottleneck and the process capacity, flow rate, and utilization. Okay, so the capacity of the first one is 1 over 37 seconds, right? So it's basically, if you write it here, 1 over 37 customers per second. Please don't forget to convert units. Remember, processing time is time divided by units, like customers, etc. Capacity is the unit divided by time. Right? 1 over 37 seconds per customer. That's not a very intuitive metric. So what is 1 over 37 seconds? So I'm going to transfer it to a more intuitive metric by just like hour. In every hour I have 3,600 seconds. So I'm just simply in 1 second if I'm handling 1 over 37 customers in 1 hour, which is 3,600 seconds. How many customers are there? So I'm just going to multiply 3,600 by 1 over 30, and I get the number over there, which is 97.3
same thing for the second one, and I divide the 46 1 by 46, and it is like 0.022 customers per second. I just multiply it by the same number, 3,600, and then I get 87.3 customers per hour. And since these are the same, this will be also 97.3 customers per hour. Okay. So we got our capacities. Now the next step is to find the okay. So the process capacity. The next step is the process capacity. What is the process capacity? It tells us the minimum of the capacity. So, like in my case, the process capacity is the minimum of this tree is 78.3 customers per hour. So this process can handle 78.3 customers per hour. In order to find the flow rate, I need to find the demand. I need an assumption about the demand. So I will give it to you in a second. But I have a question for now. Like, which one is the weakest link or slowest link in this one? Second one. Obviously, it takes the longest time, it has the lowest capacity, and that is called the bottom. Okay, from now on, the slowest capacity or the slowest link or in our process, we will define it as the bottom. So this is bottom. And as you can see, process capacity is always equal to the bottom. So that's our rule by definition. So we need an assumption. So assumption is that for the demand, our assumption is that 100 customers per hour arriving to the system. And remember, whenever we change the bottleneck, we just ideally include the bottleneck, and there will be a new bottleneck. So identifying the bottleneck is very important for us because then it will affect our flow. So now we are given a 100 customers per hour demand. Then my formula over there says that, I mean, for this you don't need a formula actually, it's just everything is rather intuitive, but sometimes better to use a formula. Says that it's the minimum of the demand and the process capacity is a minimum of 178.3, and therefore 78.3 customers per hour flow through the system. Is this a capacity constraint or demand constraint process? Capacity constraint, right? So my process is capacity constraint. Remember, demand is less than EC, that's a capacity constraint process. And as you can see, any improvement that I make in the bottleneck, let's say that I make some changes and then the bottleneck's 46 seconds drop to 40 seconds, and the capacity increases from 78 to 85 customers per hour, it's still a bottleneck because I need to exceed 97.3 to define a new bottleneck. But any improvement that I would make here means directly increasing the flow rate. You see, then I will plug in the 85 rather than 78.3, which means that then my flow rate will increase. This is important because it says that if you improve the bottleneck and if you are a capacity constrained process, if you have more customers waiting for you to buy your product, you can basically increase the cash flow for the same amount of cost. Because assuming for the same amount of cost, I didn't add a second employee, but let's say I give a training to the second employee. I say that you're too slow, I'm training you for a very minimal cost, and then all of a sudden he or she starts to serve 85 customers per hour. And then you can see that I already gained 7 customers per hour, which is direct profit.
So that is why it's very important to, that's why companies are all the time talking about where is the bottleneck, how can we analyze the processes, because if it's a capacity constraint process, with operations we can do that. Okay, so once the demand is like we find the flow rate, it is constrained by the capacity, and let's calculate the utilization of each stage. So because I got the flow rates, then I can just like raise this, and let's calculate the utilization of each. Now, what's my utilization definition? It says that if you want to calculate the utilization of the first employee, take the flow rate, 78.3 customers per hour, and divide it by the capacity of the first employee, which is 97.3 customers per hour. As you can see, these units will cancel out, and if you do this somewhat math, what did you find? Everybody have a calculator? Otherwise, I have a calculator here. 0.804, which is 80.4%. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Utilization 2. What is the flow rate? 78.3 divided by utilization 2 is 78.3. And as you can see, this is equal to 1. This is 100%. And this is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Like, we have a bottleneck and it's busy all the time. What does utilization measure? Utilization measures that what's the percentage of time a certain stage is busy. Not a resource, certain stage. In this case, in every stage we have one employee, then we are talking about one resource, one employee. It says that this stage is busy 100% of the time. And here's the deal. If your process is capacity constrained, then your bottleneck is always 100% visible. Once again, if your process is a capacity constrained process, then your bottleneck will always be 100% utilized. Because it is intuitive, right? If it's a capacity constrained process, your process moves as fast as that one guy, and then that one guy is always have some work to do, and it will be because demand is larger than the capacity, and then therefore it will always be busy. However, if it is a demand constrained process, its bottleneck will be 100% busy. If it's a demand constrained process, will the bottleneck 100% busy?
No.
Why? Any explanation? Yes.
Well, we can take for this example, let's say that the demand is only like 60 customers per hour.
Exactly.
Then they'd be able to serve all even if bottleneck.
Yes. If demand is 60 customers per hour, what would be my yield flow rate? 60, right? If demand is 60 customers per hour, my flow rate will be 60. So, dividing 78.3 by 60 will be something, dividing 60 by, let's do it. Let's assume that my demand is minimum of 60 and 78.3, and then my demand is 60. Is the second employee still the bottleneck? Yes, because the definition of the bottleneck is the slowest guy. He's still the slowest guy, but my demand is less than his capacity, which means that he also has an idle time. That's the logic, right? That's the important line. When you categorize the process's demand and the capacity constraint, demand constraint or capacity constraint, certain things might be different in these two processes. And if you just do the math, you will notice that U2 60 divided by 78.3 is less than 1. So that's the reason.
But we're now dealing with this problem, and then the third utilization of the third will be the same as the first because they have exactly the same numbers in terms of capacity, and so we got this. So we got our utilization. So let's look at them. So these are the same things that I said. They are written in the slides as well. The bottleneck is always 100, otherwise it can be less than 100%. So there is one thing that I want to ask you here. I think it needs okay, so these are my utilizations as I call it. You can argue that if you, for a careful eye, if you look at utilizations, you can justify why this guy is 8.4% is. Why? Because this guy can only handle 78.3 customers per hour, which means that this guy is receiving, the third guy is receiving 78.3 customers per hour, right? Because if I'm the slowest guy, the guy next to me will just getting the whatever I'm feeding that person in terms of work. Now, you can argue though, hey professor, wait a second. The first guy's utilization is 8.4%, but there is 100 guys is coming to the process, right? Just 100 guys are coming to the process, and he can handle up to 97.3%. Why he's not 100% utilized, right? Just if there's 100 people are coming, and if I can handle 97 people per hour, why I would not be utilized 100%? I would just work in the full capacity. Why I didn't do that? Why I just assumed that what is arriving to his plate is about the flow rate of the system. That's what I assume, right? Because the utilization assumes that everybody is getting the flow rate, which is the bottleneck capacity, which is 78.3 customers per hour. But 100 is entering this part, or at least 100 is waiting, potentially can enter the system. It's not entering, but 100 can potentially enter the system. That's a better way of putting it. But we're assuming that this guy is receiving as much as that guy can handle. What might be the insight? What happens if this guy starts working at his own rate of 97.3? The second guy will never be able to catch up. Any other comments?
You would just have more people that are waiting in between employee 1 and employee 2.
Exactly. Your queue between employee 1 and employee 2, the second triangle increases and increases and increases and increases. Like theoretically, you have an infinitely larger queue as long as 100 customers are there. So this is impractical, and that's not going to happen. Like especially taking subway, maybe there is hardly any one more person place, let alone like 10 people over there. That is why we assume that in the long run, remember all of these are long run averages, the process, everybody adjusts roughly itself to that utilization, to the flow rate. What can pass through the process in a 1 hour of time? And what can pass through the process is that much. So we are going to assume that, all right, this guy is also 78.3 customers, and per hour, 78.3 customers are leaving the system. So that's literally our assumption that how many customers are passing through the system per hour. So that's important to recognize. Okay, so then we were asked to calculate the cycle time. So let's calculate the cycle time. And once you find the flow rate, cycle time is essentially the same thing expressed in a different way. Cycle time is 1 over the flow rate, 78.3 hours per cycle.
Now, at this point, your cycle time calculation is over. Let's assume that you get the units right as well. But then again, what is 1/73 hours? Like, it's not very intuitive. Let's translate it to the seconds, or and just multiply this thing by 3,600 seconds. It will give you, if I'm not wrong, 46 seconds per customer. Again, I will do the math here. 3,600 divided by 78. 3 will be 46 seconds per customer. What does that mean? It means that if I go all the way to the end of the process and I watch in a fully rush hour, if I watch these customers, I see that every 46 seconds a customer is coming out of the system. So, but this assumes that I feel the system, right? Because when these guys are working on something, this guy is working on another. Let's say that this guy is working on the fifth customer. There's one guy waiting here. This guy is working on the third customer. Another guy waiting here. This guy is working on the first customer, etc., etc. So like the first being the customer who arrives. And so if you don't feel the system, that calculation doesn't apply. We will see. So it's an average metric to feel the system. What does it mean? This process is working at the 46 seconds per customer phase, depending on what it wants to do with how many customers it serves. It needs to increase it may need to increase its speed. Yes.
Is it a coincidence that it's the same 46 seconds at the bottleneck?
It is not a coincidence, and that would be my next remark. It's a great question. It is not a coincidence that our cycle time is equal to the processing time of the minute maximum or maximum processing time or the processing time of the bottleneck. It's not a coincidence for capacity constraint process. Now write it down somewhere, although it's also in the slides. It says that in a capacity constraint process, that's the precondition. The process needs to be capacity constrained. Cycle time is equal to the maximum processing time. It's equal to the processing time of the bottleneck. So in a capacity constraint process, your rhythm it's intuitive, right? If your capacity by bottleneck, your rhythm will be determined by the bottleneck. Therefore, your rhythm, which is the capacity of the processing time of the bottleneck, will be your cycle. So it's a shortcut, right? If you are, let's say, have the processing times, you know that, and you know that demand is infinity. Sometimes I will tell them, we have ample demand, like we have like as much demand we want. That can happen. In that case, I might ask you that these are the processing times. What is the cycle time? All you need to do is pick because demand is infinity, you know that it is a capacity constrained process. You don't need to go to capacity, find the flow rate or etc. You would say that, all right, cycle time is equal to the maximum processing time if demand is infinite. All right, so now let's make an assumption. This is a small variation, but it's a small calculation that might help us. Let's say that we're interested in for whatever reason, to calculate that how long will it take to prepare 20 sandwiches. Let's say we open the doors around like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. The restaurant is fairly empty, but towards 12, towards noon, it gets busy. And all of a sudden, we assume that the shop is empty, but then around noon, we have about 20 customers coming one after another. Like, this is typically the case. Like, you have low demand, peak time, low demand again, rush hour, or anything. But it's intuitive. Now, let's assume that 20 customers, we're interested in how long would it take for us to serve 20 customers in the rush hour, because we're interested in to, not to lose sales. There is some concept called lost sales. I don't know if you ever heard that. That applies to typically inventory, but also it also applies to service business. Inventory lost sales means that you go to a shop and you couldn't find the product that you want to buy. You may not wait. You may just simply shift to another brand or go to another shop. That applies for the any service industry as well. If I see that the Starbucks queue is so long at some point in time, I would just like skip and have my decaf coffee somewhere else. And there's not many places that you can have for doing it. So that applies here. So assume that the shop is empty and we want 20 customers to arrive. How long would it take to serve 20 customers? How can we find by using these methods? Yes. Little slow give us how many customers are in the system, what is the flow rate, I know the flow rate, what calculated it, and what is the average time each customer spends in the system. If any of those things might concern, then I know the average time they spend in the customer, 37 plus 46 plus 37, I would multiply it with the flow rate, then I would get how many customers are in the system. But what I'm interested in that, not on average how many customers are in the system. If the system is empty and I need to serve 20 customers, how long would it take? Yes. Use cycle time. That's a good starter. I know that in every 46 seconds, this service operation can serve a customer. So it's tempting to think that if every 46 seconds I'm serving one customer in 46 seconds, 20 customers, 20 times 46 seconds. The problem with that calculation in this example is that we have one assumption here. We are assuming that the system is empty. And the cycle time assumes that system is full and I load the system like everybody is working. So I need to correct that calculation error. So my original calculation, if I ask you the question that during the rush hour, I fill the system and I serve the first 5-6 customers, and now I'm interested in that, what is the next 20 customer waiting in line? Like how long will it take the next 20 customers? Then you were right. Then the answer was 20 times 46, which is 920 seconds to serve that 20 customers. But if the system is empty, how long does it take for the first customer to, let's say that this happens, I don't know, have you been to the Donut Vault? If you haven't been to the Donut Vault, go there, it's like amazing donuts. So like, this is Operations Management plus Gusto course, as you might remember, it's like some review of foods and things like that. So it's just a couple of blocks away here. It's the most famous donut place in Chicago, and it's pretty impressive. Like they only sell one batch, so they don't produce anything. They open the doors around 8:30ish, like 8 or 8:30, something like that. There's a queue in front of it, 8, like sometimes the queue is like a block long. And every morning it's like that, around 8. And I've been in the queue, and last week my brother was there, I sat into the queue. And so 2 days in a row, that I tricked him, like you have to try it. And he wasn't kind enough. So that kind of things can happen. So like all of a sudden, you just open the door and then customers come there. But in that kind of system, you still need to, first customer has to go through each stage, right? The problem here in this calculation is that we're assuming that these guys are busy. Like when this guy is serving the first customer, we are assuming that there are other customers here and they are busy. But if the system is empty, when this guy is serving the first customer, this guy and that guy are idle. cycle time assumes that everybody is busy. So I need to adjust for that. So it works like that. I will just draw a simpler version of that. So there are 20 donut milk guys waiting. One of them is my brother. And then the doors open, and the first guy starts to be served. These two guys are idle. Now, this guy moved to here. Let's say that this guy moved to here, and the next guy comes. It's still idle. This third guy is still idle. And now this guy moved to here, and another guy come in. So there's also a queue starts moving in, and then finally this first customer just leaves. So this is the first customer. Then the system is full. So I need to correct for that first customer. Simply saying that, all right, serving for the first customer takes 37, 46, and 37, 120 seconds. Okay, that's my first customer service time. But once the first customer is leaving the system, the rest is basically, the system is full, then I can use the cycle time, because the average time between the rest will be on average 46 seconds. There is no utilization loss, so then 19 times 46 seconds. Make sense? So when we're going to deal with this, so we have to correct it slightly for that. And if you do the math, these are the same things that I've drawn for, and you can do it later. It will be 874 seconds here. 874. So 994 seconds. Which will just divide by 60, you will get 16.57 minutes. So that's a good metric. It gives you a rough way in the rush hour. How can you use this? You have a rush hour, and rush hour is, let's say, 1 or 2 hours from 1 to 2 p.m. Then you can just calculate during the rush hour how fast you need to be. Like then you can staff accordingly, because if this is 17 minutes is too long for serving 20 customers, then you might want to do something with because the queue is accumulating. Ultimately, there will be some queue waiting outside in this kind of system. And if you want to write this thing in it's quite intuitive, but if you want to write it in a somewhat of a smaller formula, time to make Q unit starting with an empty system is equal to time through an empty process, like the summation of the whole processing time, plus Q minus 1 times the cycle time. Otherwise, Q times the cycle time. Yeah. That's correct. This is the time in the process. But that's a great question. Later on, we will also include the waiting time. That's more like a waiting analysis. Because so far, we are interested in the black box of the, let's say, we are opening the black box of the service system. But obviously, there are people waiting here, and it's an interesting question that how long they wait, because we don't want them to wait too long. And that's called after midterm, we will study the waiting line analysis. There we will calculate, okay, what is the average waiting time of a customer? That's an important metric for us. All right. Any questions so far? So, two small. If you have questions, and if you have questions, if you think that you have questions later on, again, just don't hesitate to ask me. And also, if you are going too fast or too slow, also kind of you can let me know. I will slow down. The call process is a worker place process, like where each worker is working in their own place, and there are inventories in between. These are called buffer inventories.
to accumulate the working process inventory. However, not all processes are like this. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, I don't need to know that, but can you just explain how the average time for 20 units or 19 customers is?
The average time is 46 seconds. 46 seconds is the cycle time. Cycle time definition is that the time between, average time between two finished customers. In other words, cycle time is the average time it takes to serve one customer. That's the idea. Yeah. Average time it takes to make a car. Okay. Any other questions about cycle time or? Yeah.
So if you say that, then shouldn't it be like you use the first employee plus the second employee plus the third employee divided by 3?
For which one? The first employee for cycle time. Like 3 of them divided by 3. Why would I divide them?
I mean, you want to add them up and then divide by 3.
What would I get if that's what you're saying is that if I add the processing time, that is the flow time of the customer, right? That's every customer spends that 120 seconds in the system. Is it correct? If you divide by 3, it's about every customer is on average spending in each station, which is not even correct because because we cannot divide the work by 3 pieces equally. Like the customers on average spend 37 seconds here, 46 seconds here, and 37 seconds here. Now, the cycle time is that it's not about the customer's journey through the process. It's about that when I fill the system, when this guy is working on the third customer, these guys are working on second and the first customers in parallel. So we are all doing some parts of it. And together, because we are 3 people working on different customers, we can generate a higher rate than 120 seconds for each customer. Do you see what I mean? What you were telling was that if these guys were parallel processing, 120, like, if it was a parallel process like that. So customers come here. Right? And each one of them are serving 120 seconds on average. Am I correct? I take the all tasks, I redesign the subway in such a way that I put 3 stations. Like in every station there is like 1 customer, and 1 employee doing everything. Like taking the order, preparing the sandwich, getting the cash, and making sending them away. So each employee was doing all these tasks, which are in total doing 120 seconds, 120 seconds, and 120 seconds, right? Then it will be my cycle time will be, which means that this process in every 40 minutes, 40 seconds, they will be. So this process in total will serve a customer in every 40 seconds, which is 120 divided by 3. That's the difference between serial production and the parallel. You see my point? So that's a good question. So why would we design this way? Because there are certain advantages this might be faster in some cases if you design the process, but as I will explain towards the end of this course, this part of the course, that there is some advantage when you design it like that. So let's look at it. What would be the advantage of giving a specialized tasks to each employee rather than assigning all tasks to 1 employee? What would be the potential advantage?
Lower training costs.
Lower training costs, because it's less complicated.
right? Just like you give them smaller tasks, its learning curve is faster. What else? Where does it less time comes? Less time or less time in the specialization?
Yeah.
Where does it come? Why would it take less time to prepare a sandwich when you specialize somewhere? Like the total sandwich, like it might be, I assume 120 seconds, but when you do the parallel processing, each one of them may do the thing with 150 seconds on average rather than 120. And you are right, like in the specialization helps you to narrow down the total processing time. And why might be the reason for that? Any ideas? That's true, more easily mastered, going back to the training, the tasks are simpler and simpler and simpler, then you can just master it in a better way. No, you can, you assume that like there's a kind of a flow through the process still.
Like if you're like doing the first stage, you can only do like 5 before the staff
The other stages will be working on it. I hear what you're saying, I think your sense is right, but there's one really good reason that would help. Any other? Just a hint. I prepare the sandwich, I cut the tomatoes, I cut the bread, and then I just greet the customer, and then I handle the money, and then the next customer is on the line, so I just I wash my hands, I put the gloves again, and I start handling the first customer all over again. So,
Is it sort of like, not using this exact terminology, but like fixed costs and variable costs? Like it costs more to like start doing something?
it's the correct answer, not necessarily the cost, there is the cost, but time is the problem, it's called the setup time. So when you specialize things, you can, because there's a repetitive structure of the same process, you don't incur so much setup time. So because of that, you have this advantage. So a guy who's cutting the tomatoes or putting the tomatoes in the sandwich doesn't need to handle the money, and therefore doesn't need to every time change the gloves or just which happens sometimes, but like ideally specialization give us these shorter tasks which are very focused. We can train the employees much better, and that's the main advantage. The key word is the setup time. So and the better quality. Like when you train people for a simpler task, it's much better quality. There's a company that I'm working in now in Atlanta. They are doing the remanufacturing of household items like vacuum cleaners or microwaves or refrigerators. And remanufacturing these products are extremely labor intensive. So, and it requires certain technical abilities. What these guys were doing was exactly this. So they designed a process for every piece of the remanufacturing process, divide the remanufacturing process into smaller pieces. By that, they could just employ a lower labor skill, and they could just pop up an operation which is like quite efficient by just dividing a complicated labor-intensive task into smaller specialist tasks. So that's the idea. We will talk about it in the specialty, but this was a good point to talk. So that's the difference between the parallel processing. Parallel processing sometimes have advantages, but typically in this kind of cases, it may make sense to divide the processing into pieces. And plus, when you are producing car, you cannot parallel processing. You can open a line, but then the task is so complicated that not one machine or not one person can do it at one time. Okay, any other questions around here about this? So, moving on,
we said that there is like a worker, this is called worker phase process, there are buffer inventories in between, and everybody is allowed to work in their own phase. But that's not always the case, and there's something called a machine phase process. It's still a serial production, and you would see it in, assembly line, basically, the production of all kinds. Then all steps are connected to a conveyor belt, and there are no buffer inventories, and the workers are working in the phase of the machine. So this is considered to be much more, let's say, boring and less productive compared to the worker phase product. So it's kind of an old-fashioned production, still in service, widely employed, but it's not that efficient from the employee perspective. They got bored because it's like very monotonous. Okay, so we're going to talk next about the maybe not so suitable example for the morning, making hot dogs. So yeah, no, it's not my choice. Like somehow this was in the book, but let's skip the pictures. And so basically, a hot dog process is consists of trimming stuff, grinding machine. You take the steak, I assume, and you put it in the grinding machine. By the way, in Germany there were a dispute about the hot dogs health, like Germans and sausages, like kind of no-brainer, the bratwurst and everything, and they're yummy sometimes. And there was a newspaper article that some hot dog companies were not healthy or hygiene problems or they were not complying with something. So their Food and Drug Administration put some sort of scrutiny on those companies, and they take samples and they measure the hot dogs. Some of them they didn't find, and like quality of the meat. Some of them they didn't find any meat inside. Like that was interesting. So yeah. It has to say that hot dogs are difficult to swallow and noodles from the inside. Okay, so there are like grind and mixing machine, stuffing operation, cook and flavor, peeler, and inspection. And then whatever, and then we have like 6-step process is a serial production process. And we have like 2 grinders and 6 mixers and 3 machines and 5 ovens and 8 peelers and 17 inspection stations. And each one of them are given capacities and everything. But then I'm just noticing that the time is kind of getting short for this example, right? Or no, we stop at 9:45, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. So let's solve this. So in each station we have some sort of capacity information given to us. So let's solve this together. So first one is the grinding machine. And mixer. So how many grinders do I have? So I have 2 grinders. Rather than 1 employee, I have 2 grinders, and as you notice that like 22,000 bucks per batch, and 22,000 bucks will be handled in 5 minutes in these grinders in each one of them. Okay, so every other metric is just for 1 machine or 1 employee. So the mixers, we have 6 mixers, and then stuffing, we have 3 stuffing machines. Cook and flavor, 5 ovens, peeler, peelers, and then inspection. Okay, so this is a 6-step process. So let's calculate the capacities. Okay, so we are given some time and some amount, so you can start calculating the processing times as well, but by giving information, we can directly calculate the capacities. So let's go by it. what do you think? What is the capacity of the first set, like grinding? Like capacity meaning that number of units processed per unit of time. In this case, we were dealing with units. I think most of the things are given in minutes, so we can translate them into minutes. So there are two grinders, but like one of them is handling 22,000 logs in 5 minutes. How much it can handle per minute? 4,400 per minute. So one grinder handles 22,000 divided by 5, 4,400 talks per minute. Now, this is one grinder. If there is two grinders in that station, then 8,800 per minute. Okay, what about the second step? There are 6 mixers. Each one of them handles 22,000 logs in 1/3 of an hour. So one mixer. So 22,000 logs in 20 minutes. 1,100 dollars per minute. Am I correct? We agree with that? And then there are six of them, 6,600 dollars per minute. All right. Stuffing is easy. It just says that each stuffing machine can stuff 2,300 dollars per minute per machine. All I'm going to do is just multiply it by 3 and 6,900 dollars per minute. Okay. What about cook and flavor? There are 5 ovens, and each oven holds 15,000 dogs, and each dog spends 15 minutes in process. So, which means that one oven can handle 15,000 dogs in 15 minutes, which means 1,000 dogs per minute. And I have 5 of them, 5,000 dogs per minute. 8 peelers, 700 dogs per minute per peeler, 5,600 dogs per minute. And inspection, whatever it means, inspecting the hot dog. So like each inspector requires 1/6 of a second to inspect each dog. So one inspector one-sixth of a second. In 1 second, 6 dogs. In 1 minute, 360 dogs. 360 dogs per minute, so one inspector can handle that much. 70 times 360. What do you guys get? 6,120. 6,120 dogs per minute. Okay, are we all? Do you all agree? Any different numbers? I might make a mistake somewhere here. Okay, so this is our capacity. So which one is the bottleneck? Cook and flavor. We look at the capacities and we say that, all right, cook and flavor is bottleneck because it is the slowest. And what is my, because cook and flavor, bottleneck, so my which is equal to 5,000 dollars per minute. And what is my flow rate? For the flow rate, obviously, I need the demand, so I need more data. So, if demand is 6,500 parts per minute, what is the process flow rate? Okay, if demand is 6,500, minimum 6,500 and 5,000, the flow rate is still 5,000 parts per minute, right? Because my capacity is smaller than my demand, which makes it a capacity constraint process. Now, here's a question. It's a good point. So, from our process, from now on, we find that like currently 5,000 dogs can come here per minute, and 5,000 dogs can. Great. So, and any improvement that I would do in the process capacity would directly translate into the flow rate. The question is that, what if I put another machine in the bottom, like a cook and flavor station, rather than I'm using currently 5 cook and flavor machines or 5 ovens. I invest one more oven and I make it 6. What would be would it still be the bottleneck, or would the bottleneck would change? So what would be the new process capacity? What would be the capacity of that station? It would be 6,000. Watch out, 8,800, 6,600, 6,900, 6,000, 5,600, and 6,100. So this is not anymore. If we add one more, the bottleneck would shift to the field. Do you agree with that? You have a comment? Okay. So then the flow rate, what will happen to the flow rate? If it shifts to 5,600, what would happen to my flow rate? 6,500 versus 5,600. And then my flow rate will be 5,600. Do you agree? If I add one more machine here, it's 6,000, then my new bottleneck becomes this guy, and my flow rate becomes 5,600. Now I'm asking you, if you had the unlucky job to be the operations manager of a sausage company, sausage production, and let's assume that, would you be willing to buy that album? How would you judge that? Like, alright, to make life easier, I'm going to erase that. So, new will be 5,600, new is 6,000, and this is 5,600, which means that the bottleneck shifted to it. So this guy is bottleneck now, and your new rate is 5,600 per minute. So 600, what did you do? By just investing in an oven, you buy another oven, and you increase the flow rate from 5,000 to 600. So you can serve more demand. Because your demand is 6,500, you can serve more demand. How would you justify whether to buy the oven or not? Yes?
I think it would depend on how much you sell the for, to pay for revenue, like the 600 and for the other
Exactly. So that's you need to do this, you put a dollar value on it, right? I had an additional $600 of, 600 dots, whatever the profit or revenue that I'm going to gain for that, versus the investment and the operating cost of a new oven, like maybe I will put a new employee, the overhead cost, etc. And we will learn later how can we make this, our ultimate goal is that this is why we are doing all this, like how can we put a dollar value on these things so that we can measure them more precisely than just looking in the air and feeling it work on that. So let's go back to our example of this. So we're still sticking with 5,000, and the bottleneck will be
labor machines. So under the same demand assumption, what are utilizations of each station? So let's calculate utilizations. So utilization of the first one, y, so U1 is equal to flow rate 5,000 divided by the capacity. You can handle 8,800. I might need your help in this. What's the percentage in this? 5,000 divided by 8,800. 56.8. Okay. Utilization 2, 5,000. Remember, flow rate always divided by 6,600. Help. 75.8. 75.8%. Utilization 3, 6,000, 5,000 divided by 600, 5,000 divided by 6,900. Anybody? 72.5%. Okay, what is the utilization of the CF? Like the bottleneck? 100%. 100%, and I think I have the numbers over here. Okay, so 100, this one, if you do the math, is similar rate, 89.3%, and this one is 81.7%. All right, great. So these are the utilizations. Our utilization calculations are clear, right? Just like you need to find the flow rate divided by the capacity, and that's it. Now, of course, this is just algebra, but what is the insight? Like, what kind of insight do we get? Like, what do you see? Again, if you were the operations manager of this process, what do you see? What would you see here? Like, by just looking at the utilization number, remember utilization gives you the how busy of each stage, right? And are there any differences between the level of busyness between the stages? Yeah.
Like you can see how the second, third, fifth, and sixth parts of the process are pretty evenly utilized, but the first part is only at around 56.8%, which is very underutilized. So if you don't, like, what I was thinking is maybe if you didn't have any plans to really buy like more ovens, you could say, okay, I'm going to sell some equipment from the first part of the process because I'm not using it to its fullest potential.
Exactly. What else? Very good. So you're saying that the first part is significantly underutilized, where we have two grinders, and maybe we can shift some of the guys working there, operating the grinder, or if possible, maybe we will even sell the grinder, or I don't know, but it's significantly underutilized. Yeah.
Just going off of that, it's also for the grinders, their capacity is also quite a bit higher than even the demand. So
Yes, their capacity is quite high, like that's why it's the utilization, but each one of them is like 4,400, so it's kind of pretty large capacity. So we can definitely do something about that. Any other suggestions? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just like asking you what might be or
they could be hiring more employees or buying more
equipment. Yeah. Where would you place the employees? Assuming that all of these machines require employees.
I would say
This is a general question to everybody. Where would you place the employees?
what would be your first choice of employee placement, assuming that employees will increase the capacity? That's the idea.
Where they're gonna be utilized most.
That's true, but assume that they will be utilized evenly everywhere. Like there's no, let's say, difference between like one machine, it requires more employee than the other. Yeah. Exactly. There's only one place to put them. In a capacity constraint process, you immediately place them to the bottleneck. Because every change you make, every one additional unit flow that you increase in the bottleneck will directly translate in the flow rate, which directly translates into revenue because it means that you can serve more demand at any point in time. So whenever you want to improve a process, and it's a capacity constraint process, you directly attack to the bottleneck. The moment that you solve the current bottleneck, as we put like a one machine here and the next bottleneck becomes a killer, then you start working on the next bottleneck. So it's a never-ending improvement process. So you solve one problem and you move to the next problem, and your problem is the bottleneck. Okay? So that's a really important point. We always start in a capacity constraint process. We always start with the bottleneck. If we have a demand problem, that's a different problem. We just address the demand. All right. So, as I said, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, come to my office, and see you next week. Have a nice weekend.